We have learned a few key things about this Reds team that are important and good, but they've also raised even more questions about what the future holds for this team.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I am glad that you're alongside me today. I have loved this Cincinnati Reds team since birth. Seriously, got the baby pictures and Reds gear to prove it, and this is my 6th season hosting the daily Locked On Reds podcast as we bring you the Cincinnati Reds every single day because we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And by the way, speaking of the Locked On Podcast Network, I also manage our Locked On MLB channel, the rest of our MLB shows. And I want to make Locked On Reds for everybody. We want to try to be as positive as we can, despite the Reds not making that very easy on a daily basis. We're also going to dive in some geeky numbers, and I'll try to give you as much context as I can and why they're important. And we'll overreact to the daily motions of the MLB Ocean and the 162. But I'm very glad that you're along with me here today because as the Reds limp through the dog days of the season, it is apparent the two important questions that they have answered about their future, and they are good ones. It's also painfully obvious that they have much more to figure out than we originally thought, and we'll go through what that is here in a little bit. And later on in the show, we'll look at a few outstanding performances down on the Reds farm by Cam Collier and Rhett Lowder. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, HVAC, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. And where we'll begin today is with what we know, the good things, the things that the Reds have answered. And there's two very, very big ones because, quite frankly, the Reds are floundering. And they're not mathematically out of it, but they're basically out of it. 3-7 in their last 10. They're 7.5 back of the wild card. Brutal road trip that they just got done with, going 3-4 against the Blue Jays and the Pirates. If you fancied any sort of miracle comeback for the Reds, that road trip did it. I was kind of out before that. I said that the Reds, they had a 13-game stretch with the Royals, the Blue Jays, the Pirates, and the A's, that they needed to go 10-3 for me to take them seriously as a playoff contender. They're far behind that, blowing that up. I mean, you count the 3 losses to the Royals, they're, like I said, they're 3-7 in the last 10, so they're way off that 10-3 pace. I just don't love it. Plus, if you look at the record, they're tied in the loss column with those Pirates who just took 3 out of 4 in Pittsburgh. For last place in the division. They both have the same amount of losses. The Pirates do make up their game difference. The Reds have one more win than the Pirates do. The Reds begin a series with the Cubs on Monday. But I do believe that 2024 has taught us who the star of the lineup is and who the star of the pitching staff is. We know who the Reds can build around. And I feel as though we talked about the Reds having a core coming into this season that it felt like the Reds could build around. A lot of that core has questions, and that's a big thing that we'll cover later on in this episode. But we know that Elly Cruz is the star that the Reds can build this lineup around. And he showed why, even in this horrible series for the Reds in Pittsburgh. He went 6 for 17, 6 hits and 17 at-bats on the series. He scored 4 times. He had 3 RBI, and he got his 61st steal. He just continues marching toward, can he get to 30-70? Boy, that'd be a lot of fun this season to see if he could do that. But he can also take over a game. And I think that's important because think of how many guys, I mean, Joey Votto was the guy that could take over a game for the longest period of time. Could you really say that about guys like Eugenio Suarez and, you know, looking back on some different dudes like that? Like, I don't feel that way. I feel that way about Elly Cruz. There are so many ways that he can take over a ball game. He showed why on Saturday, going 3 for 4, scoring all 3 times he hit, and getting that steal. Just, he had a phenomenal game on Saturday. But he is the driver of this lineup, and when he goes quiet, it seems as though the rest of the lineup follows suit. That's the toughest part, and part of a question that we'll ask here in a few minutes, is that the Reds have to figure it out that you can't just have Elly and then everybody else follows along, because if he's not hitting and no one else is, well, then the Reds just don't score, obviously. But he is the dude that leads this. Consider this, too. Since the All-Star break, 32 games since the All-Star break, Elly de la Cruz has a 287 batting average, a 350 on base, and a 512 slugging. That's phenomenal. This is the kind of stuff, like, we always thought way back when Billy Hamilton was coming up, we're just like, oh man, could he be like the best weapon that the Reds have ever had? Elly de la Cruz could be one of the best weapons that the Reds have ever had, because he actually gets on base. Billy Hamilton never got on base. Elly gets on base. But also, Elly hits the cover off the ball as well. But it's key that they found their star in the lineup. They've also found the ace of their staff. Hunter Greene is the ace. And this weekend proved it even more, because the Reds pitching staff is decimated right now. Greene's on the IL, which we did get good news about. I loved the fact that we finally heard about the second opinion, and we even got more details as to how the injury even took place. Apparently he bumped his elbow on the cabinet before his last start. This was on the Bally Sports broadcast. Jim Day was talking about a conversation that he had with Nick Krall about this, and Nick Krall was giving quotes and stuff like this. Apparently Hunter Greene literally bumped his elbow on the cabinet, but it was fine. He still made his start after he bumped his elbow. But then after the start, the bruise that he got on his elbow from the cabinet, bumping the cabinet, seemed to have been a little bit more severe after the game. But literally, it's a bruise. And I don't know why the team didn't just tell us this out of the gate. This is what I was talking about. In lieu of actual details, I will assume the worst when it comes to these injuries. Had they given us this detail, I never would have thought Tommy John surgery. But the good news is, that's what this is. This is just a bruise, and it was a little bit more substantial after his last start, so they're like, let's set you down, take some time, make sure nothing else is wrong. Nothing else is wrong. Hopefully we'll see him back here soon. That was great news, but man, the Reds have missed him, because Andrew Abbott's now on the IL. Consider the opening day starting rotation of what the Reds had to where they are right now as of Monday, August 26th. They have Hunter Greene on the IL, Andrew Abbott on the IL, Graham Ashcraft on the IL, was headed to the minor leagues anyway. Frankie Montas is in Milwaukee. They never got Brandon Williamson, although he wasn't on the opening day rotation. And now your rotation consists of Carson Spires, Nick Martinez, and Julian Aguilar, and let's just hope to God the other 2 days you figure it out. That's why this next week is going to be so crazy, because unless they do get Hunter Greene back this weekend against the Brewers, you got 4 games in 3 days against the Brewers coming up this weekend. That's going to be crazy. But this rotation clearly missed him in this Pirates series, because you had the bullpen day on Friday that blew up in their face, and you had Nick Martinez and Carson Spires pitching all right on Sunday. But imagine if Hunter Greene was in either one of those games. Do the Reds win those games? I feel like they do. And just for everybody in the back row that's thinking, what's so great about Hunter Greene? Just in case you forgot, everydayers will not have forgotten, because we have talked how much we love Hunter Greene's year this year. But for everybody in the back row, this season, Hunter Greene has a 2.83 ERA. And his strikeouts per 9 is over 10, which means he's averaging over a strikeout per inning. And this one is an interesting stat too. As far as like average hits allowed per start, so hits per 9, the average hits that a guy allows per start, 5.8 hits per 9. Nobody in the major leagues has a better rate than that. He has limited the hits so well this season. But the Reds sorely miss him. It is very clear that Hunter Greene is the ace of this staff. I am so glad, too, of the great injury news. Look, however long it takes him to get back in this season isn't that big a deal. The huge, massive part of that update is the fact that he doesn't have to get Tommy John, and we don't have to worry, at least for right now, knock on wood, we don't have to worry right now about Tommy John surgery. But the big thing this year is that we know who the two best players on the team are. But with the certainties come far too many uncertainties, including two questions we thought we had the answers for at the beginning of this season. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen today and every day. Shout out to our everydayers out there. Now, for your second listen, you got to check out after today's episode, you got to check out Locked On MLB because Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is going to get you ready for the playoffs every single day using his national expertise with his trademark humor to help you understand the game. That's Locked On MLB, hosted by Sully, getting ready for the Fall Classic. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And speaking of every day, coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, we're going to have Ethan Smith from Locked On Pirates join us. It's a little bit of a bonus episode here for this Monday. We'll do a postmortem on the series. I'm sure Ethan's going to be happy about that. But it's always a good time talking baseball with Ethan. Make sure you check that out. All right, so with the two big things that we know about this team come lots of questions. And there's a lot of really specific ones that we'll get into all off season and as we move through the rest of the year and as we move to next year's spring training. Because once again, we are looking forward to next season. As painful as that is to admit. But there are a couple of big ones. And the first two are really questions that I thought we knew the answers to. The first one for me is who falls in line behind Hunter Greene as a consistent, reliable starting pitcher. And that is key because where the Reds, quite frankly, need to be next year, we were really sure and we were really hopeful and looking at this team and looking where they were last year. And yeah, they were ahead of schedule last year, but that probably means that this year is a playoff season. Since it's not, boy, oh boy, the urgency for 2025 has just been dialed up to 11. Absolutely increase the pressure on the management of this team. I don't necessarily want to put it all on the players here. The players got to win the ball games, but management needs to set them up and put them in a good spot. And management, just as much as us watching the team, have to ask themselves, who is a consistent, reliable starting pitcher outside of Hunter Greene? Nick Lodolo has been all over the place this year. And quite frankly, back in June, we thought he figured it out. In fact, going back to like June 18th, Nick Lodolo's ERA was sitting at 2.76. If you have his season numbers in front of you now, consider that, because now his ERA is over 4.5. It's just been horrible. His last 10 starts since June 18th. That's 50 innings. He has a 7.3 ERA. And whatever it is, I have surmised that he is like rebuilding his grip, or at least rediscovering his grip for his curveball so that he doesn't cause himself more blister issues. If that's the case, then it's really hampered his game. If it's not the case, then I have a lot more questions. But what kind of pitcher is Nick Lodolo moving forward? Because I am not in the camp that when I look at 10 starts, I say, oh, that's a fluke. 10 starts, that's nothing. That's a tiny sample size. 10 starts, while it's a small sample size within the realm of a season, it's not small enough for me to completely disregard it. And the fact that he has not found that consistency that Hunter Greene has, I cannot mark him down as a consistent, reliable option behind Hunter Greene. Not yet. He's got to prove it. And maybe he can prove it for the rest of the season, but I don't necessarily know that I think he can. I think this is a question that we will carry through the offseason with Nick Lodolo. Andrew Abbott. Now, right now, you're going to look and say, well, Andrew Abbott's ERA looks pretty nice right now. But the stuff surrounding it, the peripherals, do not make me believe that continues, as his strikeout rate has dropped significantly from last year. Last year was up over 26%. This year, it's like 19.8%. Huge drop off there. And he really allows too many fly balls. That's something, and he's actually gotten better in this area, because last year he was at 28% for his ground ball rate. This year he's at 33%, so that's a good thing, but he's still allowing far too many. And consider that the league average rate of a fly ball that turns into a home run is somewhere around 14%. He's only at 12%, so he's kind of getting a little bit lucky with the fly balls he's allowing. Different statistics like fielding independent pitching FIP, or XFIP, it even takes it a step further and takes out park factor and all this other stuff. Like, these numbers that are ERA predictors don't love him. In fact, his FIP is up over 5, which means that not only is he getting lucky with his 3.7 ERA, he's getting very lucky. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Probably a little bit of pessimism there from me when it comes to Andrew Abbott. I'm assuming that he is one. I feel much more strongly about Andrew Abbott proving that he can be a consistent every fifth day option for this team once he comes back from the IL. He's currently hurt, but once he returns healthy, I feel more strongly that he can prove that to me before the end of the season. From now until the end of the season, he's got a better shot to prove he can be consistent than Nick Lodolo has. Because I've seen Andrew Abbott do it, I've seen Nick Lodolo do it, and I feel like the bad side of Nick Lodolo has just been really worrisome here recently. And the bad side of Andrew Abbott, I don't necessarily know that it concerns me as much. So I think he can kind of prove that. But outside of those two guys, man, this starting rotation is rough. It kind of feels like Graham Ashcraft's moving to the bullpen. They're talking about, and there's still no reporting on if he is ready to start a throwing program or something like that. But they're still reporting that they want to get to that point where he can start a throwing program, do a rehab assignment, and come back before the end of the season. The only way he does that is as a relief pitcher. I don't see how he could get his innings, get his consistency and the length in a game and stuff like that back up to par to be a starting pitcher. And quite frankly, if he comes back as a starter, what's he going to get? 2, 3, maybe 4 starts at most? I got to believe they're thinking about him in the bullpen long term. Carson Spires, for me, is better as a long relief pitcher. Nick Martinez, he's better out of the bullpen too. He's had some nice starts, but I really believe that his best option is as your fireman. You bring him out, maybe he even throws a couple of innings for you, 2, 3, 4 innings. I still say that's his best option. Brandon Williamson, we won't see till next year, and hopefully we'll see him next year, because he got hurt before this year even started, so we never saw him at all. And how quickly, for the consistent pitching options, how quickly can Rhett Lowder and Chase Burns, A, get to the major leagues, and B, become reliable starting pitchers? Because you don't just fall into that role. You got to earn it. So how do Rhett Lowder and Chase Burns earn it? How quickly does that happen? Because yes, they are the guys that we're like penciling into future rotations. They have the talent to do that. But they got to prove it at the major league level. The other question for me that I thought we knew, because I thought we knew who falls behind Hunter Greene as consistent, reliable starting pitchers. The other question I thought we knew is who is the ace of this bullpen? I don't know. Alexis Diaz has not impressed me this year. And I'm an Alexis Diaz guy. But outside of the basic statistics, like people, and there was immediate backlash when I put this question on Twitter yesterday, but I put this question on Twitter and they're like, Jeff, he hasn't blown a save since May. Don't come to me with save opportunities. Watch him pitch. His walk rate and his ERA have only gone up over his first 3 years in the major leagues. His first year, it was great. His second year, His third year, bad. He's averaging over 5 walks per 9. And then couple that with the fact that his strikeout rate has only gone down. In fact, last year it was up over 11 strikeouts per 9. This year, it's barely over 9 strikeouts per 9. We're not seeing the just dominating pitching. He was always kind of effectively wild, but now he just seems wild. He allows too many base runners too. Like, I think he kind of gets the benefit of the doubt, and in lieu of other options, which I don't think that there's anybody else that really has a good argument in the bullpen. I mean, I guess you would pick him as the de facto ace of the bullpen because, nature abhors a vacuum. So do bullpens. But yeah, I have a hard time just handing him the title of ace of the bullpen and feeling good about it. Of course, you could do this because enter a man who, in multiple appearances this year, has not allowed a run. A man with such a deadly slider that others cower before it. Enter Luke Mailey. Okay, I kid. No, the bullpen's been a question. It's become a question for me because you kind of need that dude at the top and how everything falls in line. One other quick question too, and there's definitely much more to hash out with this, especially with Steve returning a little bit later this week. But will the base running blunders end as these guys get more games under the belt, become more seasoned? Same question for the defensive miscues. There's been a lot of stuff that you're just like, gosh, golly, they're a young team, a lot of young players, oh boy. Are they going to, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. How long is that going to take? Because 2025's got to be a playoff year, man. It's got to be a playoff year. But let's switch gears here because, yes, been an unfortunate season where we're talking about what we know, what we don't know, and things like that. But a couple of key prospects had some good weeks for the Reds farm system. I'll tell you who coming up next. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. And FanDuel still has a ton of great boosts going on as well. If you look every single day, like yesterday, they had a 100% boost on a moneyline winner for a Major League Baseball game. So, you picked the right winner, which sadly wasn't the Reds yesterday, but you picked the right winner and you get double your winnings because of that boost. They've got some great boosts all season long as we come to the end of the Major League Baseball season. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and you can download America's #1 sportsbook. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds and take the Reds' hometown broadcast with you everywhere you go. Also, bookmark CincinnatiRedstock.com for written content about your Cincinnati Reds. All right, the week that was for the Reds farm system saw a couple of great performances by top Reds prospects. In fact, when you look through different websites that rank prospects for different organizations and things like this, pretty much everybody has Rhett, Lowder, and Cam Collier somewhere in the Reds' top 5. Some have Rhett Lowder number 1, some have Cam Collier as high as 2. Just depends on where you're looking, but they're always in the top 5. And these guys had some huge weeks, and let's start with Rhett Lowder because he got called up to AAA, and boy, oh boy, did he show out. His first start, he pitched against the Gwinnett Braves, so, the Braves AAA team. That's an easy one to figure out anyway. 6 innings. His first start in AAA. 6 innings, shutout ball. He only allowed 4 total base runners. 3 of them were on hits. 1 of them was a hit batsman. And he had 7 strikeouts. And watching the highlights of it, man, he was mixing his fastball and his changeup just absolutely beautifully. His changeup is devastating. The thing falls off a table. And it looks like he can really tunnel it. When it's on, when his fastball and his changeup are on, I don't know how a hitter distinguishes between the two. And I think that it's interesting because this season, he's had a very nice mix of strikeouts and walks. He's thrown across 3 different levels. He's thrown 108 2/3 innings pitched. He has 113 strikeouts and just 24 walks. You can change your level of opponents and the level of talent that you face as you go from, Dayton to Chattanooga to Louisville. But as a pitcher, you can control where the ball lands in the strike zone, and he does that really well at all levels. Cam Collier for the Dragons had a heck of a week, of course, punctuated on Friday with a 3-homer game, first 3-homer game of his career. And it was a fantastic. He's on fire though, because last 10 for Cam Collier, he's got a .414 batting average, a .565 on base, and he's slugging .897. Most people, that's their OPS. He's slugging .897 in high A Dayton. And just remember for a moment here, it's easy to forget. Guy's a first-round pick and highly touted prospects, and so you're thinking, man, high A, why is he down there? He's 19. He's still figuring out a lot of stuff. Forget about baseball. He's still figuring out life. And he is hitting the cover off the ball here recently. I think it's interesting, too, as we kind of look. The season for the minor leagues is really starting to come to a close. The minor league season for most levels will end before the major league season does. And kind of looking back, we'll do this. We're trying to do this each Monday as we move forward, kind of looking at the farm system, some names to keep on your mind. And Chase Petty is a guy that we know. We have heard this name multiple times throughout the past year, or a couple of years, especially since the Sonny Gray trade. It's like, okay, the Reds traded Sonny Gray for 1 prospect to trade him for Chase Petty. So Chase Petty's going to be a game changer coming up soon, right? He's still a really young guy, but he's kind of had a tough year. He's a prospect that, for my money, when you look at some of the statistics, you don't really love them. And maybe there's some underlying stuff, and I'd like to talk more to Doug about this, where, do the stats bear out how he has performed? Is it something that you can see that is different that the box score doesn't love? But the box score doesn't love him because he's thrown 106 innings this year in AA Chattanooga. He has 103 strikeouts and 50 walks. So not even a strikeout per inning, and he's got almost half as many walks as he has strikeouts. That's not good. Where I was really praising Rhett Lowder for his nice strikeout to walk ratio, not good on the part of Chase Petty. And also this year, and I don't get too much into this when it comes to minor league performances, but he has a 4.84 ERA in 23 starts with Chattanooga. I don't love harping on statistics for minor leaguers because, quite frankly, they don't translate at all to the majors. But when they're notable, like this is notable for me. Chase Petty is supposed to be a guy, or at least he was billed as a guy. And he's got a 4.84 ERA in a whole season at Chattanooga. I don't love that. I don't love that at all. I'd love to get more of an inside take from Doug on that one. our friend Doug Gray over at RedsMinorLeagues.com. Always does a great job covering Reds minor league teams. One guy, though, that I think, he's not burning up any sort of prospect list. He's not going to be highly rated on anybody's list, but he's a name that you should know. And some of you do. Zach Maxwell. He's a right-handed relief pitcher who is in Louisville right now. He's 23 years old, probably close to a call-up either here in September or maybe early next year, something like that. He has 43 strikeouts, and he did just get the call-up to Louisville this season, so maybe he finishes the year in Louisville and doesn't make it to the major leagues. But in 29 and a third innings for Louisville, he has 43 strikeouts. Dude is getting some work in. Now, he does have a big question mark with him. He also has 24 walks in those 29 and a third innings. So almost a walk per inning. You don't love that. But the strikeouts are huge. And he's got some interesting stuff. And as me and Steve always love the joke, everydayers will know. He's a guy whose game-used uniform we could easily fit into. He could get a call-up soon. Who knows? Maybe it is this year. But overall, the Reds do have some guys who are starting to perform a little bit well here as the season ends. And we've talked with Doug before about how it's kind of been a down year. We would like to get a full review from him, and we'll also get Tom Nichols on here to just kind of give us the inside look at some of these guys, some of the guys that you don't hear about on top prospect lists, because quite frankly, outside of the top 10, most people don't really pay that much attention to. We will here on Locked On Reds, and we'll try to do it here on Mondays now, call it Minors Mondays. Everybody kind of calls it that. It's not as if I came up with that name. It's not original, but hey, great week for Cam Collier and Rhett Lowder. I was happy to see that. And that's where we're going to end today's edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Thanks as always for making us your first listen every single day. Every day is coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast. Ethan Smith from Locked On Pirates will join me. We'll do a postmortem. I'm sure he'll brag a little bit. The Pirates won the series. But it's always a good time talking baseball with Ethan. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, because you can prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to the Locked On MLB podcast down in the description of today's episode, so you don't have to go searching for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. And hey, you can always trust that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.